Hi, I'm Rigger. This is You All Right, and today let's explore some cat comprehension conundrums. If you've been keeping up with the channel, you'd know that I've firmly staked my flag into camp that the cat is the crown. Yes, that crown. However, after last episode, half my comments were telling me how wrong I was, of course, because of what the cat said.
I need to know everything, but more than anything, I need to know why my makers left me here. Only to leave and make all of... Ow!
So, I know it won't help, and my comments will still be full of people writing their own theories, or more likely the theories of bigger YouTubers and just stating them as fact. But either way, I wanted to discuss this because I think it's actually quite interesting. I like the evolution that this line adds, and not necessarily that it makes things wrong, but it might change how we interpret things. So, let's explore this idea of what the cat said. To be clear, I don't mind if I'm wrong, I'm not sore about it, that's how theories work. We make tons of them, and maybe some of them are right, maybe some of them are wrong, and if they're right, that's amazing. But given this new information, rather than dismiss something outright, something that I am quite invested in, I think this one's pretty good, instead, let's explore it. So, what I have for you today is actually two theories, something a little different. Two distinct theories about the same subject from different approaches. The first one is about the cat being the crown itself. If you completely disagree with that and just don't want to hear it, here, go to the second theory at this timestamp, because there is a second one, a different version of events that I think still makes a lot of sense, and in that, we'll also discuss why the gods may have left the cat behind, also how the vaults work, what they are, the nature of them, who made them and why, all of that. So we got a lot to cover, let's dive in. First, a quick recap of why I think the cat is the crown, just to list them out real quick. Number one, it is completely different than every other thing in the Ever After. It has its own special system of animation even. They had to revolutionize what they were doing making RWBY to make it appear how it does. They made it very special and very different and doesn't match anything else in the entire land.
With the cat specifically, you talked about geometric shapes. Is that also inspiration for the cat's look?
Yeah. It helps marry the characters to the world a little bit more, and it does kind of tie back in with maybe some Grimm that we've seen in the past. The very subtle checker pattern on the king tie.
I'll never say it right.
So does the cat have a unique rendering style? Like, is there something special?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that started again with us just kind of wanting like the cat to feel a little bit special and knowing that they'd be in a lot of stuff. In most cases, like the cat does not have exterior lines, which is very different for us. And we just kind of wanted the cat to feel a little bit more connected to the world and just feel a little bit different.
The model itself was very, and the ray were very complex. Yeah. And then on the visual side, had to implement a whole bunch of different shaders and like rendering techniques.
It turns out when you base your entire pipeline around the idea that every character has an outline, that you then have just one character that doesn't have an outline.
Why? It's clearly not just a regular being of Ever After, it is very special, so we need to ask that question. Number two, it has way more magic and power than anything else here. Again, it's super special. Number three, it has a strong desire to leave, only reinforced here. People were telling me I was overestimating how strong that desire was. We see here exactly how strong it is, which, even motivations aside, no matter why it wants to leave, suggests that it might be coming back with us to Remnant in the story by the end. And if it does do that, what role would it play? You know, removing yourself from what the cat says, if you're writing the story, why are we bringing this cat back with us? What role does it play? Well, it would make a lot of sense if it was involved in the main sort of story, a key to the story. So that's number four, because one good answer to it being the key to the story is it being a relic or something involved with that plot, because it would advance things forward. And the gang did ask to go to a place at least like the vaults when they made the central location the first time. Number five, whether or not you think this place is a vault, which I'm actually not too sure about, I don't think it exactly works like that. What I do think is it's a match for a description of where Oz spoke to the God of Light. This isn't the afterlife they're in right now. They say very explicitly that Oz came from the afterlife to here because he wants to go back, and the God of Light says that they are between realms. This is between realms. That's a perfect description of a place like the Ever After. It's its own little dimension in its own little realm. And this is a place just like that. A place where the God of Light first reveals the relics so Oz can make that connection. It would make a lot of sense. Even if this place isn't actually the Ever After they're standing in now, like before it's made, it is still a place between realms, so Ozpin knows that places like this exist. So, if he took that knowledge with him into the world and then wanted to find a hiding place for a relic that was not on Remnant to make it as impossible as he can for Salem to find it, he might try using something like the Staff of Creation, trying to test what it can and can't make, to find a place just like where he woke up in, to hide the relic, a place between realms where Salem can't get it. That would make a lot of sense. So even if the Ever After isn't here, it's another place like here, just another one of their projects. Number 6 is the cat's curse of curiosity. It needs to know. Lots of people keep calling him something to do with knowledge, but he isn't. Not just because we have a being of knowledge already, but the gift of knowledge is to know and to learn, to expand one's wisdom for the betterment of themselves and complete their understanding, to further their understanding. That's not what the cat has at all. It has curiosity. It wants to find out everything. It is the pursuit of knowledge, but not the gift of it. It is more fittingly choice. It wants to know everything about everyone. What choice will you make, whether it's the tiniest little thing or the biggest thing? Why did people make the choices they did? Why are people going to make the choices they will? Why is that your favorite dessert? Why is that this? If I give you this option, what will you pick? And its greatest question is, why did my creator choose to leave me behind and go elsewhere? It must know. It must realize what that choice is. It must discover the answers to the questions by asking all the questions and hearing everyone's answers. What choice they will make. And also, there's some weird corruption of that by its abilities to remove choice. Its heart control and body takeover stuff is like its inverse. It's the removal of choice as a power, which still suggests a strong connection to choice as a concept. Number 7, its color scheme. It is both reminiscent, of course, of the blue spirits of the relics and the purple of the God of Darkness's color scheme. Very prominent colors in all of this, and it has both. And finally, 8. Just because it's basically the crown in shape and pattern. It has prominent blue diamonds in all the places that the crown has in a way that's way too close for coincidence, especially when you include its eyes. Its face even implies the shape of the crown with the bulbs on the edges, the points of its ears, and even the implied continuing center point that the two whiskers make. And also, the one that seals the deal, the one that I can't get away from, is the diamond on the back of its head. It's this lone diamond that doesn't fit the rest of its patterning, doesn't have to be there, is so odd by just being there. But it also fits every specific description of the crown we have seen. Every time we've seen it actually shown in detail, it has this one specific diamond on the back of the head. It is a perfect match. It is so perfect I can't convince myself that it's nothing and a coincidence. It's just so specific. However, as we know,
I need to know why my makers left me here, only to leave and make all of... Ow!
So people, of course, declared this theory dead in the water. So here's my thoughts on it. Because it is so exact, it's not even reaching. This is the pattern of the crown's gems. Why is it here, and how can we make sense of it, and what could it mean? So here's the first theory on it. My first big thought is that the cat is not talking about the gods here, and I know that you'd want to say it is. He's talking about Ozpin. Now, Ozpin didn't make the crown, obviously I'm not trying to suggest he did, but here's what I'm thinking. The last time the crown was supposedly spotted was in the Great War here, where the King of Vale had a notable crown on his head and a sword. We obviously know that that's Ozpin, you can even see the cane, and they highlighted these things, so we assume that they're the relics. And that was around 80 years ago. That's when the Great War approximately was, which doesn't sound like long enough for the cat to be talking like this. Though maybe it is, I mean 80 years is a long time, but also, we don't know that this is the exact crown, because given the descriptions of its powers, wearing it all the time seems like an awful idea, though maybe they hadn't figured out what they were going to do with it yet. Also, time is very whacked down here in the Ever After. We have no idea how it totally works, so even if it was 80 years on Revenant, we have no idea how long it was here. It also should be noted that in actual Alice in Wonderland, almost no time passes while Alice is in Wonderland compared to the real world. So 80 years on Remnant could have been eons down there for all we know, which means that Team RWBY would be spat out about the same time they left, not long after. But who knows, just guessing. Also, that's not accounting for things like time trees and all the other weirdness that can happen, so that timescale is totally not reliable, even if he did discard it only 80 years ago. Also, the cat says creator, not creators. I know everyone always just credits the God of Light with this plan, but he's just the messenger here. It's an equal partnership. He and his brother bestowed the 4 gifts of mankind together, and when the 4 relics are reunited, it will summon them both back together. They both made this happen. So, it should be creators, not creator. But maybe the cat doesn't know that. And also, Jin, in fairness, credits herself as a creation of the God of Light.
I am Jin. A being created by the god of light to aid humanity in its pursuit of knowledge.
So maybe they consider their god to be the one creator who made them, or because the god of light summoned the relics themselves, that's fine, he's the creator. Whatever. But thematically, it also seems very much like both gods had a hand in a lot of this place, just from the themes and color schemes, so it seems odd that the cat is only mentioning one. And we also can't rule out that the cat was playing dumb about hearing about the gods from RWBY and saying, oh, those sound weird. You know, maybe he did know them, maybe he didn't, but also, if he wasn't lying, maybe he didn't know them. Just imagine for a second that the cat isn't lying here, he has no idea about the gods, and when he hears about them from RWBY, he thinks they're weird and strange. So that would mean he doesn't know who his creators were, he just awoke here. But that really made me think of one specific thing, one minor thing. Cast your mind back to Volume 5 of Ozpin, Crow, and Raven.
Well, gave them the ability to turn into birds.
After their alternate avian forms are revealed, they very clearly ask Oz, the liar, which is a big theme following this.
Okay, so have you done this with others?
And Oz says no, he brushes off the subject because...
As helpful as that might be, unfortunately it is not that simple. My power is finite, and if I'm being honest, dwindling.
His magic is dwindling and he's not using it for things like that. But even only 80 years ago on Remnant was before Crow and Raven, before he might have stopped giving out his magic for things like this. To answer why, if the crown is the cat, what if Oz did the same thing here? What if he committed his magic to transforming, or at least, like Crow and Raven, housing the crown in an animal form? I severely doubt anyone could ever destroy these godly items. I don't think you can break them. But giving them a form, or maybe even just housing them in another form, especially a very magical form that looks like nothing else, well, that's a maybe. It might be a lot more possible. And again, this is before Oz stopped using magic. He was still experimenting, because Crow and Raven came later. Also, if you wanted to make this relic near impossible to get, not just leaving it in a weird dimension, but making it a living thing. It can run, it can move, it can fly, it can teleport, it can even split itself up. Well, that is near uncatchable. Of course, not betting on the evolution and degeneration of the cat's personality over however long it's been stuck here. That really could be something. It's an established power Oz has just applied to an item rather than a person, though it's a magical item, and presumably it has some kind of consciousness inside it anyway. Remembering, Oz didn't have a plan for beating Salem, that was very clear. He has no plan, he doesn't know what to do. So, deciding that he lacked any answer, he would make one relic impossible to ever get again as far as he could. As far as he could imagine, he made it the most difficult relic to ever get. So, he picked one that seemed like the biggest curse to have, perhaps, or at least the one that might be able to tell Salem what she needs to do in the future and show her things to come. That could be very dangerous for her finding other relics, and decided to get rid of it. That makes quite a bit of sense to me. However, we come to the part of that statement that the cat made.
I need to know why my makers left me here, only to leave and make all of... Ow!
Well, again, is he wrong? Didn't Ozpin make them, in a sense? He made them like this. He also has presided over Remnant since basically the rebirth of man and shaped civilization. He almost did make them, and as far as making them huntresses and growing up like this, yeah, he did. He shaped all of that. The cat isn't wrong. But also, the cat is only interpreting what he knows from this side of things, perhaps with no information of what goes on Remnant ever. Nothing to go off. So, instead, imagine he is made by Oz and discarded in here to run around and be basically impossible to find. He knows nothing of who made him or what's going on, except that he doesn't fit in here and he is different, and he is slowly going insane with questions. And then the first he would hear of the outside world would be humans falling through, and presumably the first one of those was Alex and Lewis, and Jean as well. Perhaps they're the first the cat ever heard of Remnant after its creation in this form. So finally, after however long it's been for the cat, these answers start to come in, but they're very vague, because he said Alex didn't really know much about what happened, and didn't get on with Jean at all, it seems, so he didn't tell him anything. It may not know who created it. He just presumes that they left him. and now knows where to because of these other beings from Remnant. That's where the gods went next. And this is only confirmed when RWBY and the others fill in the gaps for him, tell him about the gods. So he goes, that's who my makers were and they left to make humans. That makes sense. The cat here is only talking about things he's only just recently learned, and those have fueled him even harder to get out of here. Probably he did want to leave when Alex and them too. That did happen, he said as much, but that's because he wanted to leave anyway. He hates this place. He doesn't fit here. He's bored, he's insane, he has this insatiable thirst. It's merely the creator and God's part he's adding on here because he has that information now. He has a target now. He thinks he's made by the gods, and he's sort of right because he's a relic, although he might not even know that, and probably doesn't know that in this theory at all, but he then presumes that that will be his answer. However, he's wrong. He was sort of made this way by Oz, and he assumes that what RWBY and friends told him is his backstory, but they're wrong, or at least partially wrong. And all of this culminates in me answering one of my own questions I had about my own theory. If this was all true and the cat was the crown, how does it turn back? Does the magic just break upon leaving? That'd be weird because it would imply that the magic was somehow tied to the Ever After itself, and that's kinda weak. Or does the cat return to Remnant and run off seeking its creator? That makes more sense, and eventually it meets Oz, now Oscar, who would be the only one actually capable of undoing his own magic and reverting it back to what it's meant to be, freeing the form of the cat from its living hell and giving it peace as it returns to being a crown. That actually logically makes sense in the story, and it means that the crew can chase the cat around on Remnant for a while when they realize, and probably when Oz tells them, that it is one of the relics. They have to catch it before Salem does. So that's a functional use for it in the story back on Remnant, especially in Neo's body. Or even if that doesn't last, just as the cat, it still makes sense for something they can do. So that's one interpretation that came to mind. Now let's take a totally different approach, changing gears, second theory. The other one takes the opposite approach, that the cat is correct, and the cat is talking about the gods and he's right. That this place and the cat was made first by the gods, and then indeed they left to make humans. I still think the cat is the crown though, or at least the spirit inside the crown. This would make a lot of sense. There have been breakdowns in the past showing that if you study, particularly Jinn, you can find pieces of the lamp in her design. Like, some of the bits of jewelry and stuff match up to the lamp itself. The relic object is part of her form, or at least inspired into her form. I'm not going to redo all the breakdown, but you can find it if you look for it. This again, it makes sense. The thing that they're housed in or summoned by is in their form's design, their creation. That would then explain the cat's exact match to the crown in its design. It's not that the crown is in there, or that it is the crown, it's that it matches its thing it's supposed to be housed in, which is the crown. Because it's so close it's ridiculous, I still can't get over it. But then, how would that make sense? Because the relics weren't made until long after the first run of mankind failed. Well, that's correct. But that doesn't mean the spirits didn't exist beforehand. And I'll elaborate. We assume that the creation of the relics is the creation of the spirit, that they're one in the same, that they came into being here at the same time. But what if that's not the case? Jinn and Ambrosius are summoned from them, but who says they live there? That these aren't in fact, magical items that house them, but they're more like portals, more like keys to bring forth beings that already exist and were made by the gods previously. Now, Jinn does say she was made by the god of light to help humankind advance in their knowledge. That's still true even if they were made beforehand, if they were made for that purpose eventually, and I'll explain what I mean. Which is, what if, like some of us theorized at the end of Volume 8, the place they were falling into would be the home of the spirits, where they all live when they're not being used by relics? That is kind of true, although just for one, and that there are other dimensions that we don't see where the other spirits live. Just like there is no proof Remnant is the only planet of life in the universe, there is no proof that this is the only other pocket dimension. What if instead of a shared world with each spirit, there was instead one special being per realm, that this is the cat's realm? And what I mean by that is, yes, the tree is the highest power here. It seems to run and make the world function. It has a role and rules and maintains things. The cat, though, is special. It is the outlier here. Once again, backed up by his behavior and also his animation style. That would mean that the tree basically regulates everything and keeps the world running as the gods want it, but the cat is the case study, the thing they were watching to see what happens when they applied this idea to life, what would it do? That would then imply the gods, before making Remnant, did trial runs of each of the qualities of life they want things to operate on that they would eventually use for people. That this is one realm and its theme is choice. There is also one for knowledge, there is also one for creation, and also one for destruction. And there could be many, many more with other qualities, other gifts that didn't work out, the gods didn't like, and did not apply to people when they created them as their core beliefs. We saw how the gods were fine abandoning Remnant when they weren't really happy with it, or when the results didn't come out as they liked. So saying that they've abandoned countless other little dimensions and creations, of course, that makes total sense. Why wouldn't they? And that would, of course, fit in with what the cat said, that it was abandoned here. It even fits in with the one creator thing. If this was one god's pet project, as each of them separately worked on their different ideas of what they could put into their masterpiece in different realms, running these little experiments until they settled on 2 qualities each that they would then try mixing together for their masterpiece as described. It actually makes a whole lot of sense. These are just their trial runs. Ever After is the trial run of choice before he goes and applies it to humans. And the reason it's choice is because this realm actually revolves around that concept. When things fulfill their purpose, they actively choose to go back to the tree. They feel that's what they should do, or at least most do. There's also elements here like destruction, to instill things like fear, to instill concepts that force a wide variety of different forms of life here, traveling on lots of different types of life, and seeing what choices they make. And a lot of them have sort of inbuilt programming of what they sort of should choose. And also provided is a complete way out. There is total death here as an option if you want to choose it, but obviously no one chooses it. Even the cat doesn't choose it. These are interesting things, and these are bits of information that God can observe and understand the role of choice. But then, of course, they introduce the cat into this world mostly of order, of things fulfilling their roles and purposes, with everything heavily influenced to make certain choices about their future and not really question things, with systems of order you introduced, and then one special being with the concept of absolute choice at its core, one thing that doesn't fit in. And that's what the cat is. It has autonomy. It can do whatever it wants. It can choose to go wherever it wants. It can even remove others' ability to make choices. It can totally control people if it wants. This is a true wild card into this ecosystem. It is introducing choice into a balanced world and seeing what it does. And seeing its apparent success, the god who made it got up and left. Good, choice works. I'll give that to humans. The world then just continues without them, as the cat went slowly mad, as the only being here with this kind of free will, these kind of thoughts and choice. Nothing else here acts like it. It's going insane. So, when the grand masterpiece experiment failed, but the gods obviously decided to give them a second go, a second chance, the god then creates these relics, and he did not create the spirits. They were already existing. The gods instead made items that linked to the realms where they worked on those concepts. So in order to restore humanity, we will create these tools, these keys that connect to the places where we worked on these concepts that made you, so you can better understand them by harnessing a small amount of their power for your improvement and for your education. So in turn, each of the relics links to the special being that represents that concept in each dimension that they worked on. Which again, still makes Jinn truthful. She was a being created by the God of Light for the betterment of mankind. She was just created before mankind came to be with that intended purpose in mind to work on the concept, and then was repurposed to help mankind better itself into more what they wanted it to be, through the use of her concept. And utilizing her as the embodiment of it. Because, at least for knowledge, she was the proof of concept. So, through the relics, each can lend their powers in a specific way with rules for the betterment and use of mankind, in the limited fashion that the gods laid out. And that means, if left to your own devices, if you're the being of knowledge or the being of creation, you're probably fine. You probably have a good time relatively where you live. It's just unfortunate that the cat is vengeful and somewhat insane given the nature of its concept and gift, the things it does to it. In this case, the cat's concept is choice, manifested into humanity by analysing the lives of the world around them through the crown, and deducting it down to a choice in their future. That if it can use its power to analyze everything that makes up humanity, everything that makes up the world, it can deduce what choices you'll make, and that allows it to pinpoint a major choice in your future and show it to you. It can use, like, deductive reasoning. That doesn't mean the cat can tell the future right now. It's applying its concept through magic to human life through the relic. It's what the gods made it to do. It's lending its power that way. But the cat on its own is just going insane. Just like Jinn probably doesn't actually know everything at all times, but when summoned it gains the knowledge of everything that's happened previously so it can inform of what you need to know. And creation probably does have the ability to create anything at once, although it probably has to do it by hand, but when summoned through the relic it can use the powers of its gift to instead create anything, although with rules and only one at a time. When you start working in that sort of field, that sort of thinking about these concepts, it really starts to make sense. That these are the ultimate incarnations of their concepts, and when utilized through the relics, they can use their magic in very specific ways. Ways that might not actually be available to them in their own realms exactly like that. And also, if that's true, means we should really shudder to think about all the other rando concept pocket dimensions that might lay abandoned out there to never be touched again, and I feel sorry for them. Also, this would actually explain the vaults. There's always been this question, what are the vaults? Who made them and how? What are these places? Did Oz make these pocket dimensions? How? Well, here is your answer. The gods made them, of course. 4 vaults that are limited gateways into the realm of each gift of mankind, to the 4 realms they made that they decided worked. Now, I don't think you can walk into the vault and keep walking and wind up in those realms. I don't think you can walk into the vault and walk into Wonderland. I don't think it works like that, because that would defeat the purpose of living on Remnant. And hey, maybe you can, maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't think so. Although there might be a way out if you're ever trapped in there. However, what I need you to imagine them like is imagine the vaults like 4 tunnels with fences. In fact, 4 storm drains. These are 4 storm drains from other dimensions. You can't cross the barrier, but magic can, like water running through. These 4 tunnels allow the flow of magic to the linked relics in the world of Remnant, to its home dimension, and allows the spirit to move through. So, there's 4 dimensions with 4 spirits that are the embodiment of their concepts, and there are 4 relics on Remnant, and they're in their vaults. So, invisible to us, these gates allow the passage of magic. When you use the relic, the open portal to the realm of whatever the concept is allows the spirit to move through and be summoned by the relic and utilize all the magic of that concept and that land. And then, when it's finished, it retreats back to its home land until it's summoned again. So when the God of Light made the relics, he made these 4 chambers that link to these dimensions so they can function, and placed one in different spots around the world so that different areas would have access to them equally. And then the God of Light showed that these relics exist to Oz and put him back in the world. Then, once back in the world and realizing the dangers of reuniting those relics and leaving them in the hands of the people, Oz went around finding them all. He might even use the relics to find them. Ask the lamp, where are the other relics, where are the other vault locations? Except at that time, they weren't vaults, they were just like caves with a magic item floating in them. However, then Oz decided to seal them away. Remember, they weren't meant to be sealed away. That was not the intended purpose. The god said the purpose of them was for mankind to use them and to learn. But Oz did not allow that because of the danger of uniting them. So instead, Oz was the one who decided to seal them away. The vaults and so forth, the pocket, exist from the gods to allow magic to flow in and out, but it is Oz who put up the barriers. Oz found the vaults existing where they are, and opened to the world for people to go and get them when they found them, and instead he sealed them away. He didn't make the vaults, he made the doors, and he tied them to very specific magic, and then spread out the living keys all over the world. That means that even if Salem caught him and tortured him and attacked him, he would still be unable to open the vaults again on his own. He made them impossible even for himself to open without those keys. And those keys also have magic to defend themselves, and can run away, and can be transferred, and can end up anywhere. It's the best he could come up with to keep the vaults sealed, just so Salem couldn't get them. But doing so also prevented mankind from ever using them. And if you're ever wondering, when Oz said that he used large amounts of magic, he gave away huge amounts of magic in the past, people were thinking, it's because of the maidens. It is, but it's not just that. It's to make these doors, to give up massive amounts of magic, to create barriers so impenetrable, to create basically portals that seal off these little dimensional rifts that even Salem can't break them down, no matter how much magic she throws at it. That he threw everything he had in it and cut his own magical power by a huge amount in order to set up this system to make them as safe as possible. Which is actually a similar concept to what I said earlier about turning the crown into a cat, that it would then be alive and hard to catch and move around. Same idea here, but instead it's for the maidens. They're alive, they transfer, they move around, hard to find. At least as hard as he could make it. And, like we're told, he built the schools around the relics. Now, he didn't just build them around the relics and make the vaults. He built them around the vaults because they were already there. He just locked them up and then later decided they needed more defense, so he built entire schools on top of them, surrounded them with civilizations, and filled those schools with warriors to defend it even further. Which also would explain why the doors are more human in design. They're more mechanical and slidey, just like Oz's cane and the things he makes. It's a magical version of that. It's technological. It's not like anything that the gods make. They make very natural things. Even the god of destruction made very naturalistic things. But the barriers blocking these magical caves are all technological looking, despite being activated by magic. That's because Oz applied his understanding to it. And that was Theory 2, which really has me wondering about the consequences of the cat returning to Remnant. If it is just the spirit that's meant to be in the relic of the crown, and it's set free in the land, with almost no real magic in it, and the cat has all these powers, what could it do? It could be chaos, and likely still dangerous, because it probably counts as the relic if you were to reunite it with the other three. Or even if not, it could do what it does and influence people, perhaps even influencing maidens to open vaults, etc., to get its crown and get everything else, because it does want to reunite them and meet the gods again, which is still just as dangerous. Especially if he's in Neo's body still, which could be a thing by that time. Or even not. Who knows? Either way, scary stuff. But those are my responses to what the cat said and everyone saying how wrong I was, and what I think perhaps the different interpretations could be if I'm not wrong. Rather than rule the theory out, I think it's actually made it more interesting and opened more ideas. I still think the cat is the crown, but if not, well, we'll have to see what their explanation is. But either way, this isn't good. This is bad. Bad developments. But I think that the theory and this video was good, and if you did too, please leave us a like, and if you made it to the end, please let me know what you thought about all of this, about the cat and everything else discussed here, like the vaults and magic and the various realms and how the vaults function and all of that. I would very much like to hear what you had to say. Please let me know, and until next time, my name is Rigger. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope I did alright.